Well, today you're going to talk on arthritis.
Well, yeah, we're a couple
chocolate?
things. Yeah, well, we've got several things on the thing, but
Okay.
with summertime going around and everybody's gearing up to get outside and do more things, I thought that as we all get older, we want to kind of cover the bases so that our joints are super comfortable and we're not hobbling around and we're feeling good and our knees are working okay.
Right, knees are a big deal.
Yeah, knees are a big deal for a lot of people.
My
And
wife, Pam, has got some arthritis in her hands,
Mhm.
but, especially a couple of fingers.
Yeah, a lot of people get that, so we can, kind of go over some of those things. Yeah.
All right.
And one thing I did notice on my own knees, it was really interesting, was I was starting to have a tendon or issue on one of the knees that was bothering me, and
Right.
when I got into road biking, they said, if you have those movable clips where your feet can move around, you'll find a spot and your knees will get better. And sure enough, they did. My knee
Really?
completely got better
kidding.
after road biking. Yeah.
Cool.
So it fixed itself from exercise. So that was kind of nice. I was happy about
Well,
that.
what can we do to keep our knees or
Well,
joints
first
in-
thing on joints, it's kind of interesting. A couple things when you got to look at, okay, what are the underlying things that are going on and why are we breaking down and why is our connective tissue wearing out? And so, we have several issues going on, and one of the big issues, and it's the big one that I talk about over and over again, is inflammation. And anytime that there is chronic inflammation going on in the body, we are wearing things out at a much more accelerated rate. So it really goes back to, eating a diet that's high in foods that are anti-inflammatory and connective tissue enhancing. So we go back as the number one anti-inflammatory thing you can do is fish oils. And I talk about that over and over and over again, but they're just so powerful and so amazing. So that's something that right there you're reducing it. Number two is you want to eat foods that help glue us together. Now, one of the foods that's very interesting in arthritis is sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are loaded with hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid is a really good compound. It's sort of a newer breaking supplement in the area of arthritis, in that what it does is it grabs onto molecules of water and creates cushion. So when you have like a molecule of hyaluronic acid, it'll attach to 200 molecules of water. It's like a sponge filling up. So you have a dry sponge, you get it wet, and it fills up and gets a cushion. Then it becomes soft and squishy.
Right.
So in a sense, when you get enough hyaluronic acid between your joints, it's creating space between your joint and rebuilding that cushion between it, so that when you're pushing down and you're moving back and forth, the pressure of the joint of movement is like taking the sponge and squeezing out a little bit of water and then refilling it back up. So hyaluronic acid is a really big new thing in joint support and joint rebuilding. And where I found hyaluronic acid particularly helpful in the supplement area is especially people who get arthritis issues in the back and in the neck, because you've got that vertebrae and you have those disc areas
Right.
that have there. And those particular are really needing that kind of cushion to rebuild that area back up.
And are you saying the sweet potatoes have it in
Sweet
them?
potatoes are one of the richest food sources of hyaluronic acid.
In
What
fact,
about-
Peter, sweet potatoes have been said to be like the perfect food, I've heard for years.
Yeah, I mean, they're loaded with fiber. They're much lower on the glycemic index than white potatoes. They're packed out because of the color with beta-carotene. So we get into sunburn a little later on. I'll talk about
Right.
how important that is.
Yeah.
And so they really are, because you get a load of fiber, so your blood sugar is not being affected by it, and very, very loaded with nutrients that are great.
What about things like pumpkin, which is the same color, or
Same,
squash?
yeah, all
or
that stuff.
All of that stuff?
But sweet potatoes are different than pumpkin. So pumpkin, you're getting the same carotenes, but you're not necessarily getting the hyaluronic acid.
Okay, and what about
that you get.
squash? Other kinds of squash that are that color?
Same carotene level, but not the hyaluronic
Okay,
acid.
okay.
part.
Isn't that interesting?
So yeah, so on the food. So the other food that I go over and over again into is vitamin C rich foods, because vitamin C builds collagen. And collagen is part of our connective tissue that glues us together. So lots and lots of berries, again, in the diet. And it just doesn't stop. The research on berries, the newest thing I saw on blueberries was blueberries will also stimulate weight loss. I thought, hey, that's pretty nice. Also, besides all the other stuff they do in gluing us together. So buy frozen blueberries of all kinds, blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, organic strawberries only, raspberries, And you know, always keep those in the freezer and bring them out as snacks and use them. And you're getting compounds in there that will really, really help
And if you want
overall.
If you want a little heat with it, cayenne pepper, that also is, it's supposed to be break down fat globules.
Yeah, it
like
does.
that.
It's thermogenic,
Yeah.
and so it's stepping up the metabolic rate, the rate the body burns calories.
Now we're talking
So-
about maybe an eighth of a teaspoon now.
Right, it can get
Yeah.
pretty intense
Yeah.
when you get doses over that. I've done that,
Haven't we all?
and we all have an interesting experience the next morning when
Yeah,
you go to
boy.
the bathroom.
Yeah,
It's
there is. Yeah,
bleeding
right there.
very hot.
Too much information here. But yeah, that's but yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah, that's good. And we always have the other traditional things that I like is, you know, glucosamine, sulfate, which is, or glucosamine hydrochloride. You can get those easily in supplement form. Glucosamine is the building part of the joint to build that in. Chondroitin, which actually prevents the leaving of the connective tissue from your joint. So one's building and one's preventing it exiting. And so those two are often combined together as glucosamine and chondroitin. And then one of the other great compounds are sulfur compounds. Sulfur helps us to repair tissues. It's all involved in repair. So there's a supplement form called MSM, which is very, very good. But it also means that in your diet, you always include a lot of sulfur foods, which is onions, garlic, particular shallots, leeks, and then you've got all your egg yolks, and you've got things like all the broccoli family, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, because if you've ever burned any of those vegetables on the stove, they stink.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
The stink is sulfur. That's what makes it
okay,
stink.
okay.
So
Is that right?
yeah,
I'll be darned.
that's when you burn broccoli, and you know how it smells. It's
Oh, it's
horrible.
awful.
I've always
And
I've
burning
never-
eggs.
I've never liked the smell of broccoli, but yeah, I love broccoli.
Yeah, but that burning, that's
yeah.
the sulfur.
Oh boy.
So that's the compounds in it
That'll do it.
that do that. So,
Okay.
so those are all good. Now there's interesting compounds in avocados too. They're called saponins, and they make a supplement in France for arthritis based on avocados, which is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
So they have a lot in it. And there's another nut from Africa called shea nut. They use a lot of shea nut butter for like skincare products, but there's a compound in shea nut that's super anti-inflammatory, and it lubricates and helps cushion joints. So there's a product that came on the market called Flex Now, really good for knee issues, you know, for
Okay.
really supporting joints and knees.
Can
So
you get a shea nut in the United States? I've never heard of
yeah,
that.
they're really interesting. They're huge. They're the size of like a giant coconut, almost the
Oh.
size of like a honeydew melon.
No kidding.
Is it a
Yeah.
melon or a squash?
No, it's a
or-
nut.
And
It's
how
a
do you
nut.
cook it?
Well, you don't. It's just got an oily compound that looks kind of like cocoa butter
Oh,
they
I
make
see.
chocolate from.
So you have to get it in another form.
Yeah, you have to get another form.
Oh.
So they make a shea nut oil that is used for joints.